Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense, the show where me and John talk about pro wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. A lot of the time it doesn't, and this week is no different. You guys are in for a treat because we had WrestleMania just over a week ago, and it was such a success that the WWE thought, fuck it, we're going to get rid of a bunch of our talented superstars. They call them superstars, not wrestlers anymore, which is weird. But then they just got rid of them anyway. So that's very, very strange. So we're going to talk about that today because some of those releases were very, very strange. And I would argue some of them didn't make any sense.
Indeed.
You see, that's how we work in the title of the show into the show itself. Very clever on our part. I think you'll find. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's talk about some of the releases. Now, some of them you're kind of like, whatever. Should we run down a list of all of them first? And then give our opinions? Is that a good idea?
That sounds like a good way to do it.
Okay, so, you have a list of all the
I do.
people. Okay, cool.
So we had Samoa Joe, Peyton Royce and Billy Kay, Mickey James, Bo Dallas, Mojo Rawley, Chelsea Green, Tucker, Wesley Blake, and Kalisto all get released from their contracts last week.
Right. Now, if you ran a wrestling company and you had Mojo Rawley and Samoa Joe on your roster, and you needed to cut some fat, you needed to save some money, I can understand why you would get rid of Mojo Rawley. All right.
Yeah.
If you're like, I'll cut this guy, I'll keep Samoa Joe, because you want to look at it like, which one of these two fuckers can benefit my company the best, right? Which one of these two guys can help me out in a wrestling company the most?
Mojo
Rawley, God bless him. You know, he tries, he turns up, he's very hype, whatever that might mean. But is he a good wrestler? The funny thing is, we don't really know, right?
Exactly. I mean, he's not had a whole lot of opportunities to show what he can do.
Right, and he's been in the company for, well, I think they said like 9 years or something, right?
Yeah, with the NXT run as well.
Now, if we don't know whether or not you're a good wrestler in 9 years, there's a good shot that you might not be. But at the same time, it all depends on how the WWE use you. Because if you look at a guy like Samoa Joe, who is an obvious benefit to any wrestling company, that guy is the kind of person you want to keep around. Yes. It doesn't matter if he's injury prone. Yeah, I had him on commentary, make him a trainer, have him as a producer or an agent or something. That's the fucking guy. That's the guy you want in your company. Keep him. He knows more about wrestling than some of the fucking new people have forgotten. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous. And then they just get rid of him. But if you look at Samoa Joe and his run on the main roster, you'd be like, this guy? I don't care. Do you know what I mean? If you look at it through the lens of just a purely WWE perspective, and you look at what Samoa Joe did in like 5 years on the main roster, he didn't do a whole lot, right? Which, of course, is bad booking on their part because, good God, how could you not use that guy right?
Well, I think part of it as well is he has been very injury prone in WWE, like way more so than he was in, his TNA run. So it seems like every time he did get some momentum going, it would just, get cut short, and then he'd be gone for a few weeks or a few months, and then by the time he comes back, he almost has to start all over again just to get back where he was. So, I mean, it's been a very stop and start kind of career for Mojo and WWE, but that's not to say that the guy obviously isn't like still supremely talented in the ring and just one of the best talkers they have as well. Like they did the smart thing, to their credit, by putting him on commentary just to kind of find something for him to do whilst he's been out with like these concussion issues. And to his credit, he's probably like the only good part of the Raw announce team over the last year. So, it feels weird that they've clearly decided that he's surplus to requirements now.
Right. Isn't that wild? That he's a really good on the mic, and they had him on commentary, and he's been really good on commentary because he knows how to talk about wrestling, and he sounds different in the beside all the other corporate fellas, and they were like, nope, no use for you. We can't find a single thing for you to do. I mean, you're already doing a thing, but we can't allow this to continue. No, you're out of here. Like, how bizarre is that? I think last year we talked about Eric Young leaving the company, or being relieved of the company, I should say, and how we find it mystifying that you couldn't find a use for Eric Young, right? It's like you can't find something to do with this incredibly talented guy who's really good at the entire aspect of pro wrestling. You know, he can talk, he can do comedy spots, he can be serious, but they weren't using him, right?
Yeah.
So in that way, you're like, I can kind of see why they cut him, because they weren't using him. So they didn't even get a chance to showcase him at his best. But Samoa Joe, they were using as a commentator, and he was really good at it because he can really talk. And they were like, nope, see you later. Like, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because he didn't do anything wrong. You know, he didn't put a foot wrong anywhere.
No.
When it came to commentary, and like we said, he was one of the better people on the show because he knew what the fuck he was talking about, and then they still got rid of him. You're like, that's mystifying to me. I don't get that one at all.
Yeah, I'd say of all the releases last week, that was the one which it definitely stood out the most.
Yeah, I'm just like, what is the matter with that company? Why would they ever let go of Samoa Joe? Because he's one of those guys that will absolutely go to a different company and will absolutely tear it up. Right? Because all he needs to do now, if he wants to, if he is getting injury prone, if he wants to wind down his career, he could go to any number of companies and just kill it.
Yeah.
For a year or two and just go out in the high. I would love to see him go back to Ring of Honor. I think that because they would know what to do with him there. You know, I don't know about TNA. I've heard TNA is getting better than what it used to be, but also, like, you know, it's a bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
You know, he could go. It's like the WWE. He could go back to TNA and do a really good job, or he could go back to TNA and become a detective. You know, with a talking cat. You don't. It's who knows. You know.
Well, I mean, to TNA/Impact Wrestling's credit, like a lot of the guys last year who got released this sort of time ended up going to Impact and being used pretty well. Like you had the Good Brothers, you had Eric Young, you had EC3 went back for a bit and worked with Moose to try and help elevate him. Heath Slater. Like a whole bunch of them went over there and kind of were better off for doing that. And in some respects, being used a hell of a lot more than they would have done sticking around with WWE as well. So it was probably for the better of their career that they got released and were able to do new things. So, I think if Samoa Joe did go back to Impact, I think he could, do something new and interesting there. Especially with like the roster being so different in Impact now to when he was there before as well.
Maybe. I don't know, man. I mean, I really would like to see him because I feel like he shouldn't have left Ring of Honor to go to TNA to begin with.
Yeah.
But then again, it did get him like national exposure. Like it got him over to a whole new audience. So, the flip sides. I don't know if I want to see him go to AEW because, then what's gonna like him and Christian and Sting are gonna form a stable.
Exactly.
The Big Show. Oh boy, the most powerful stable in wrestling.
They're gonna call it the Union 2.0.
Yeah. Oh god, what stupid name would they come up with? I don't even want to think about that. But Samoa Joe, I feel like, is one of those guys that he'll be able to bounce back and he'll do great. He will. That guy doesn't have a goddamn thing to worry about. It just mystifies me that any smart company, a company as big as the WWE, would look at a guy like Samoa Joe and go, "No, you're not for us." After having employed him for years, like it's very strange.
Well, this is the company that, decided to inexplicably split up the Iconics for zero good reason whatsoever when, they're desperate for, female tag teams to kind of build that division up and give them, teams to work with. But no, they figured what we're going to do is we're going to have you guys lose to the Riot Squad and then split up and then we'll do pretty much nothing with you, which is just
and then release them
yeah,
like
it's their fault.
How that one, now you see the Samoa Joe one I thought was very stupid, but the Iconics one made me so angry that they released the Iconics. They had the Iconics there. They were perfect as a team. They worked perfectly. Like, say whatever you want about them in the ring, but as a unit, as a tag team, they were perfect because they could talk and they could get heat, and they were able to fulfill a role in the tag team division that was sorely lacking because they don't have any proper tag teams in the women's tag team division. If you have a clear de facto heel team like the Iconics, who are already a team, they're not just two random thrown together people, that's perfect. As a linchpin for that fucking division, you need that kind of person, or you need that kind of team. And I mean, to be honest with you, it says an awful lot about what they think of their women's tag team division. I don't see those belts lasting much longer because they've done so little with them. They don't have a tag team division for the women at all. And if they did, they wouldn't have split up the Iconics. That whole thing just doesn't make any sense. Why they would take a perfectly good team like that. I mean, we're going to talk about examples they got in a second. They took a perfectly good team and then they split them up to make them worse than the sum of their parts. Like, together they're perfect. Split them up. Let's see how well they do on their own. And then what they did when they were on their own is just paired them with other women. Why split them up if you're just going to pair them with other women who they don't have the same chemistry with? And then release them anyway. How about instead of splitting up the Iconics in 2019, they kept the Iconics together, and then by this point, they'd be an actual tag team in the women's tag team division.
Yeah.
How wacky of an idea is that? It's crazy.
Well, the thing is, even when they did split them up as well, like, Billie Kay has been making chicken salad out of chicken shit with the whole resume gimmick that she was given. Like, she was being regularly featured on SmackDown and always kind of being entertaining as well. Like, you just had to look at the Twitter reaction to see she was getting over with fans and everything, which is, you'd think that's what you want your wrestlers to get over and be popular and be draws for the company. But no, apparently that's frowned upon. And if you get Kevin Dunn, the WWE executive, who apparently isn't a big fan of you for whatever reason, or doesn't get your act because he's like a 60 to 70-year-old guy who obviously has different tastes compared to the majority of the WWE audience, then that's it. You're screwed essentially.
But you're right, dude. How bizarre is it that they were investing TV time on Billie Kay? Like, she was on TV a lot because she got over and people were loving the bullshit that she had. Like you said, they were giving her shit and she made it into something amazing, right? Well, she did the best she could with it.
Yeah.
But Why would she had a match at WrestleMania, but that whole thing with her and Carmella, they were clearly doing something with her. She was on TV. She was like, why would you spend that much time dedicating TV time to this person for no payoff and then release them?
I
Like,
mean, it's I don't want to say this is probably what happened, but at the same time, with WWE, you wouldn't be surprised if it was all a big rib, having her like do this resume gimmick where she's like trying to put herself out there and like get a job and everything, and then fire her. So now she really does have to kind of, like look for a new job. So
I mean, that's a lot of time and effort to go and devote to just a rib. Like you said, though, this is something that we shouldn't at all be surprised if it turns out to be the truth, because that company is very strange.
Yeah.
Very, very strange. Don't understand it. I don't know if that's true, and I don't know if the Kevin Dunn thing is true either. But then the reality doesn't make any sense either, because she was on TV all the time. I don't see why, if they didn't like her, they would put her on TV.
Especially
also,
when you get like Peyton Royce, who wasn't being used at all, and who was like very vocal about the fact she wasn't being used, and like even turned it into a little angle for herself on Raw Talk, and like spun it into a title match with Asuka and everything.
ooh.
But yeah, I mean, like it's weird to see how WWE was using both of them, or in Peyton's case, not using her, but then they both end up fired. It makes no sense whatsoever.
I don't get it. Do not get it, man. So, yeah, those three really like, and then Mickey James as well, right? That one. So those four to me were like, what the fuck? Like if you and I ran our own wrestling company, and we got the chance to fucking book those four people, hell yeah,
Absolutely.
of course. Good God. But again, if there's somebody come up and like, all right, you can have either Samoa Joe or Mojo Rawley, you'd be like, what? Let me see here. Who do I want? I don't know. It's Mickey James, man. What a pro.
Exactly.
What a pro. She can still go. She can still talk. She knows an awful lot about the rest of the business. She's been through an awful lot of stuff. And they couldn't find anything to do with Mickey James. I mean, like, I've heard somebody say, oh, she's too old for them. Right, whatever. She could be a commentator. She could be a backstage producer or an agent or a trainer. Mickey James should be a trainer.
Yeah.
Right? Have her down at the performance center, keeping everybody in line, because she knows what she's doing. How could they get rid of Mickey James?
I mean, I don't even buy into the whole she's too old argument as well, because it's just double standards when you look at like
what
some
is
of the
Goldberg.
Exactly. There's so many men on the roster who are, way older than Mickey James, and she's what, like only 41. Yeah, she's the oldest woman on the roster, but doesn't mean she can't
She's
still
only
go.
41.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Like, that's not old at all.
No.
Good God. I don't know, man. That's all of that I find super strange. Mickey James, man. That is weird. So I would imagine here I was trying to play it up in my head, like where these people would go after the WWE. I don't know if you've done this as well. Maybe you have.
Not so much. I mean,
well, we can hash it out.
Yeah.
So like I said, I kind of I would like Samoa Joe to go back to Ring of Honor. I think that would be nice. And I also think there's enough new people on that roster he could have great matches with.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that. Mickey James, I wouldn't at all be surprised to see her return to TNA or go to the NWA, because they need women.
Yeah.
And, she's already well familiar with that brand.
Because
Because
obviously her husband's working there.
Nick Aldis, of course. So she'll be able to get in pretty easily.
Mm.
And I think that having a woman like Mickey James would be perfect. They need that kind of credible veteran on their roster to really make that women's division shine if they're going to go for it and try to revamp themselves. I think Mickey James could fit there perfectly. And, you know, that's a role that she could play really well.
I
So
think
I would like
they
to see
do
that.
have someone in a similar role already with Melina there, but you know, that doesn't exclude Mickey James from coming in and be able to do her own thing. So
Or have them both.
yeah, why not?
That would be pretty cool too. You know, that works. Is Melina wrestling, or wasn't she a manager? Or
Um,
did I mishear that?
I believe she's wrestling as well.
Okay, well then I could have them both. That'd be cool. Or like I said, go back to TNA.
Mm,
It's Impact, and it's been Impact for years. I gotta
yeah.
stop calling it TNA. The Iconics, though. I mean, there are women's tag team titles in Impact.
Mm-hmm.
They could go there. Possibly. I wouldn't want to see him go to AEW because AEW has such an awkward women's division, whereas
Yeah.
Impact has a very, very good women's division, and historically they've always treated their women pretty well. They get a lot of TV time and storylines, and they get over almost as much as the boys do
Mm-hmm.
on Impact. So I think that's probably a good place for the Iconics to end up.
But I was thinking maybe AEW just because AEW's women's division is a sort of
Joke.
yeah, it kind of needs some more credible faces in there. But the trouble with it as well is that, you know, the women never really get much TV time on Dynamite. So unless you're watching Dark and Elevation, then chances are you're not going to see, you know, most of the women's division in action. So yeah.
That's exactly it, man. I don't I don't understand that company, because if they brought new people in, those people would be on TV for 5 minutes and then they'd be forgotten about because they never put the women on TV. Or if they do, it's just like, here's a random match, here's a random whatever. They don't get storylines or
Mm-hmm.
dedicated TV time. It's just like random one-off matches. Unless you're Brandy Rhodes, in which case you get 80 storylines, none of which go anywhere. But the other women don't have like proper storylines or proper chances. Like once in a blue moon, they'll get a chance to talk or whatever. We talked about this. Britt
Mm.
Baker having her own talk show like once.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where's the rest of it? God damn it! That's what we want to see. You know, I don't know if I think it would take an awful lot of restructuring for that women's division to be good enough to entice veterans to want to work there more.
I think with Peyton Royce's husband already working in AEW, that might be a draw in itself. So,
Well, I was thinking about that because there is a working relationship between All Elite Wrestling and Impact. You could see, like, what about this for a cool storyline? What if Peyton Royce was in All Elite Wrestling and Billy Kay was in Impact, but because there's like a cross promotional thing, the two of them team up together and they win the Impact Women's Tag Team Championships? Because then they're from different companies, but they're still a team, and you know that's real, actual cross promotion between the company.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then you could do a storyline where like one of the women has to choose which company they're going to be in. You know, you could bring up places, you could do stuff with it. There's just a fun little storyline. Tony Khan, that would be £750, please. I mean, Tony Khan, if you want to employ me to rebook your women's division, I'd be happy to do it. Happy to do it because somebody needs to do it. Stuff like that, I think, would be quite fun and interesting, which is something they haven't really taken advantage of with this whole cross promotional thing. They've just they've just kind of like, here's a thing, you know. They don't build anything up with it. They just have a 20-minute long match or whatever.
Well, it's all one way, really, as well. Like with AEW appearing on Impact and doing their like weekly commercials and whatnot, and then as far as Impact coming to AEW goes, you just have the Good Brothers
The
showing
Good
up to
Brothers.
kind of back up Kenny Omega. So
Right, like what's the storyline there?
yeah.
I don't I don't understand. Really, I wouldn't want either the Iconics or Mickey James to go to AEW just because of how bad the women's division is right now. God knows when they're going to be able to fix that. But those are the big hitters.
Yes.
We got a couple of other cats to talk about. Mojo Rawley, we briefly mentioned, in a comedic fashion.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who I think he probably only really stuck around in WWE as long as he did because of the whole Gronk connection, because he's like good friends with that guy who, you know, I think WWE were courting for a long time and thought they'd signed and were gonna train up to be the next, you know, celebrity wrestler
And then they
turned good.
released them.
Yeah, because he was like, nah, fuck this, I want to go back and play football.
Why would you
So
want to go back and play football?
apparently
Ridiculous.
he really likes concussions.
Well, then he could have stuck with the WWE as well. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, like how funny was that? I heard that too. That Mojo Rawley was around there because he was good friends with this Gronk character, Mr. Gronk. But then they released Gronk last year anyway, so who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like they didn't use him for anything. I think that was just poor timing. You know, they got him. Like, yes, we got Gronk. We're gonna sell WrestleMania out in minutes. And then pandemic happened, and you know, poor timing on that part. So with that in mind, I wouldn't be surprised if down the line they actually did do something with Mojo Rawley and Gronk. It sounds silly because they're both released, but like I feel like, you know, the WWE is the only place Mojo Rawley has ever wrestled. As far as I know, was he a wrestler before this? I think he was a football player.
Yeah, he was.
So, like, he's probably pretty good in with those guys. You know, being released is just a piece of business. I foresee that happening down the line. Give it 5 years and people are oh, it's Mojo Rawley. Remember him?
Yeah.
5 years, you know. So, like, I think, and there's a guy who, if he wanted to go at the independents, could do a pretty good job for himself. Right? He's got a little bit of recognition. Name, like he was at last year's WrestleMania. You know, he's former 24/7 champion.
Seven-time 24/7
7
champion.
times. That's 7 times more than both you and me put together.
I know.
This, by the way, is bullshit. Why have we not won this belt yet? Santa Claus has won this belt. We haven't won this belt. Outrageous. Please send R-Truth over to our office immediately so we can do a quick... I'll win it, and then you beat me for it, and then R-Truth can pin you for it.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
And then we're like, all right, cool, see you later.
I mean, R-Truth must be about 147-time champion at this point.
It's like 50-something, isn't it? Is it more than 50-something?
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, let's... Fun Google times. 52.
Jesus wept.
R-Truth has 52 championship reigns as a 24/7 champion. This belt came in 2019. So he is a 52-time champion in just less than 2 years. I mean, what the fuck? Because sometimes you hear him talking about people who that they're talking about the New Day in WrestleMania. Like, the New Day are like 11-time champions. Like, what? 11-time? That's ridiculous. That's too many championships. You know, R-Truth over here are 52. Do you think they did this just to spite Raven?
Maybe, yeah.
Because they love spiting people. As we've discussed, they're a spiteful company. And Raven famously was the most decorated wrestler in sports entertainment history, having racked up titles in ECW and WCW before becoming a 22-time hardcore champion, I believe. It might be more
Something
than
like that.
22.
Yeah, yeah.
And Raven himself says it's much more than 22 because you're including house shows and stuff.
Mm.
So once you added up all those title reigns, it turned out he was the most decorated athlete in the WWE. And I'm sure somebody said, fuck that. Get that
But
shit out of here.
is R-Truth really like a better choice for that, though? I mean, come on.
Well, it's safe to say that they like R-Truth better than they like they like Scott Levy.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I hate that because I love Raven. I do love Raven.
Mm.
However, R-Truth is also very entertaining. But then you're like, he's so fucking good. This is what you think is a good use of this guy? You know, just clowning around and getting his ass beat with a roll up.
Yeah, yeah.
By this point in time, R-Truth, you gotta be able to counter that roll up. You know what I mean? How do you not see it coming?
Mm-hmm.
Every goddamn time. Anyway, we're not talking about R-Truth.
But
Mojo Rawley,
yeah.
I think he'll just bounce around the independents. I think he'll be all right. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see him really going to any of the major companies and doing anything big. So, who knows? Like, bouncing around the independents might be the best thing for him as well, to just get out there and wrestle again and wrestle outside of like the WWE machine for the first time in his career as well, to see, you know, how other people do it, I guess. So, yeah.
I agree. I think that's good. It's just good experience for him just to get used to something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But you never know. You never know. Who else was there? Kalisto?
Kalisto, yeah.
I mean, a little surprising, but, you know,
Well,
Andrade left.
The thing with Kalisto, he hasn't been used in a long time. To be fair, he was injured sort of in late 2019 and then didn't come back until like last August. But then they split up the Lucha House Party in the draft and sent Gran Metalik and Lindsay Dorado over to Raw, whereas Kalisto was still on SmackDown. But he didn't actually appear on SmackDown at all since the draft and until the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal from just before this year's WrestleMania. So his one isn't a shocking one in terms of, you know, the writing must have been on the wall, I'm sure, with the fact that he wasn't being used, but he was still a good hand and like a talented cruiserweight. So it feels like there could have been a role there for him if they'd really wanted to use him, but I guess they just didn't.
Right. How bizarre is that? He's a good worker. You could do something with him. I don't understand why they don't ever do anything with Lucha House Party.
Mm.
Like, those are three talented dudes. You can't think of anything to do with those guys. No, we can't. They all wear masks. Let's put them together. Lucha House Party. What does that mean? We don't know. Like, what the fuck does that mean, Lucha House Party?
Yeah.
What house? You're a tag team. You're having a fight. I don't know, man. I thought this one was a shame as well because Kalisto, former United States champion.
2-time.
Much like Samoa Joe.
There you go.
Get that shit out of here. See, only 2 times. So you got to be a 52-time champion before you can succeed in that business. You know? Kalisto, like you said, they weren't really using him, but he was a guy that could go. I thought he was fun.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really see why they would well, yeah, he was injured. He wasn't doing a whole lot anyway, but it just speaks to how they just can't seem to use people correctly.
Mm.
And it does add fuel to the argument of how they're not very good at using the luchadors or the Latin wrestlers.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Kalisto, like you said, they weren't using him. So if you're not using him, he may as well do what he wants to do somewhere else, which is much like what Andrade was going to do. Like, if you're not going to use me, I'll just do it somewhere else, right? No hard feelings, but see you later. Kalisto, I don't know, man. Like, they had all these guys that, if they put a little bit of time and effort into them, could have been really good, like Latin superstars, and they just don't do it. I
Yeah.
really thought Angel Garza was going to be the guy. I'm like, I love this guy. He's got real confidence. He's got the facials. He can work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see what he's up to next WrestleMania. You know what I mean? I feel like he, which is a damn shame. But but what are they doing with him? What have they been doing with him? Nothing.
Exactly.
Ridiculous. So I'm like, why can't they use these people correctly? Again, if you were running a wrestling company and a guy like Kalisto was available, you'd be like, hell yes, I want him on my show. Because
Mm-hmm.
now we got some variety. Now we've got a show, let's have a lucha match. This will be great. And I'm sure you could find somebody to have him wrestle against. What about Mojo Rawley? He's available. But I don't know, man. That's a silly one too. Like you said, he's a safe hand. He's a good guy to have around the company. Weird. So like he can go to Kalisto is going to go back to Mexico and make a lot of money.
You'd think so, yeah.
You'd hope so. I can't see him going to any of the other major like North American promotions.
No, probably not. I mean, again, maybe Impact Wrestling is the one that kind of sticks out for me, just
I
because.
think maybe. I don't think All Elite Wrestling would be interested, but I think he could work in like the X division.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good shout, man. TNA could do. It looks like TNA are really gonna clean up with this one.
Well, they did last year as well, so
They fucking did. They did a good job last year. They're like, this is perfect. Fair enough. Who else was on the list?
So one that I was surprised with was Chelsea Green.
Oh yeah.
Who was obviously Laurel Van Ness in Impact Wrestling a few years ago. Then she got signed by WWE and shipped off to NXT. But she's kind of never really got a chance to show what she can do. I think part of that has been down to injuries and stuff. Like I think in a very first NXT match, she broke her wrist, and that kind of put her on the sidelines for a bit. And then obviously when she did get brought up to SmackDown last November, I think it was, her very first match, she broke her wrist on that as well in the match where she was supposed to win as well. So that kind of just completely derailed her. And so we never really got to see what she could do in a WWE ring.
Right. Like we've seen her in TNA, and she was pretty Impact.
Yeah.
I'll never learn. We saw. Well, it was TNA when she was in there, right?
I think it was sort of at the crossover point. Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to look for excuses for myself. But I remember her in that company, and she was pretty good. She seemed to get it pretty well. I'm like, okay, cool. This is interesting. But like you said, we've not been able to see anything of her because she got fast tracked through NXT. Like if she was injured in NXT, just keep her there. Let people see her. This is exactly what happened before. We had talked about this a couple of years ago where they fast tracked a bunch of guys from NXT to the main roster. And the only one who I think stuck out was Lacey Evans or Otis, I suppose.
Yes.
From Heavy Machinery. And everybody else just hasn't worked out. And that's the problem, is that you can't fast track people straight to the main roster because people aren't going to know them, right? It sounds silly, but if you have a bit of a history in NXT and you go to the main roster, then the smarky part of the crowd is going to be like, it's this fucking person. And then the rest of the crowd is going to react accordingly.
Exactly.
Right? But if you just bring somebody up and nobody knows who they are and you don't give them a good reason for people to remember who they are, then they won't. And it's not going to work. And it'll just fall flat in its face. And we've seen that happen a ton of times, So it's a dang shame that Chelsea Green didn't even get the chance, really, to show off what she could do.
Well, I think as well, part of her problem was when she got the call up to the main roster was when Paul Heyman was like the executive producer or whatever of Raw. But then he got fired from that role pretty shortly afterwards. So that meant that all of the plans that he had for her just got scrapped. And she was stuck in limbo for a long time. And she's kind of said in some of the interviews like since her release, that she would go and sit outside Vince's office for weeks on end, like just to meet with him and kind of get something going for herself. And there was at one point plans for like a group between her, Vanessa Bourne, and Santana Garrett, but that never really came to be. And then apparently she even proposed becoming like the Mickey James to Mickey James's Trish Stratus, and like doing a rehash of that old feud. But again, it was like something that kind of almost came to pass, but then Vince or whoever decided, no, we're not going to go that route. And again, she's like, stuck in limbo, waiting for something else to do. And it's just, it's pretty disappointing when you've got someone who's there, who's clearly driven and like determined to get on the show and contribute to the show, but the opportunity just never really arises for him. And as a result, the company deems that they're surplus to requirements again. And it's just like, well, you didn't even give her a chance to show us what she could do in the first place. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. They didn't even give her a chance. And then they're like, well, see you later. But again, like, I don't know, man. See, because they didn't really give her a chance, you can kind of see why they cut her. But you don't need, because she wasn't, if they weren't going to give her a chance, that means they weren't going to do anything with her. So may as well cut her. But at the same time, you're like, well, wouldn't you be better at your jobs if you could find something for somebody as passionate about this business as Chelsea Green on your show? But, as we've established with a lot of these other releases, passion alone, talent, being good at your job, that's just not gonna cut it, fellas. Who else was it? Is Tucker the last guy?
No, there's a 3 more, I think. So Tucker, we can talk about next, but obviously he came in Heavy Machinery, pretty popular tag team in NXT, really. Like just a comedy act team, I guess, but
they were fun.
Yeah, they were good in their roles.
Yeah,
and then they brought him up.
Them.
They brought him up to the main roster, and they, seemed to get over pretty well with the crowd there as well. And then I think, in a way, though, it almost became like Otis started overshadowing Tucker quite a bit because of his sort of wacky personality and his over-the-topness. And obviously that led to the truly baffling decision to have him win Money in the Bank last year, which seemed to be, I don't know, some sort of spur of the moment type thing, because they didn't seem to have any kind of plan for that whatsoever.
Nope.
But I guess they spun it into the feud with Dolph Ziggler and the whole Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville storyline. But whilst all that was going on, like Tucker was he was in the background, and sometimes not even in the background. He was very much like the forgotten man. So, again, he must have been thinking around that time when Otis is getting this big singles push, like, well, they're not using me at all here. Why aren't they? But like the really weird part of it was when they did the whole, like Tucker trying to defend Money in the Bank briefcase against The Miz, and then Tucker turned on him and cost him the briefcase. And then there was like zero follow-up to it. Like they didn't even have a match. They didn't, Tucker didn't really get a chance to explain himself or show up on Raw or SmackDown the next week and kind of bask in his heel turn or anything. He just disappeared pretty much after that. And
not quite.
Yeah, well, I mean, he did show up and have like a part to play in the whole 24/7 title Goon Squad stuff. But again, it's
along with Eric Young.
Yeah. But
EC3.
Why?
I 100% agree with you. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating to see this all play out in real time. Heavy Machinery. Those two guys work really well together, right? but you could probably guess that if you split them up, it might not work as well because that's the dynamic. It works perfectly, right? Otis is this crazy fucking. He's very enthusiastic, you know,
Charismatic, yes.
charismatic. He's very charismatic, and he's very silly. He's quite a
Mhm.
character. So he's the silly man. You've got a kind of straight man in Tucker. Like he's still quite silly too because they're a goofy tag team, but he's kind of the straight guy. Notice is the wacky guy, right?
Yeah.
And if you keep them together, that's what we call comedy. But if you split them up, then neither routine works
Mm.
because then you just got a weird, fat, crazy guy. And on the other side, you've got this whatever they wanted to do with Tucker when they split him up. Like it doesn't, the dynamic doesn't work if you split them up. But also, they were a fucking tag team.
Hmm.
I don't understand. I still don't. I never will. Their insistence, their goddamn insistence on splitting up established tag teams. I hate
Yeah.
it. I hate it. I hate it so much. They do an awful lot of shit that annoys me. But look, we've talked about heavy machinery and we've talked about the Iconics. Can you imagine how different the tag team division, both tag team divisions, would look if they kept those two tag teams around and used them efficiently as tag teams in the division? Because, like we said, dude, it's awesome that the New Day are 11-time tag team champions. They're one of the best tag teams in that company of modern times. They're really, really good, right?
Hmm.
Not going to deny that at all. But instead of making them 11-time champions, why don't we use them to give the rub to other people and establish other tag teams? Doesn't that make sense?
Well, exactly. I mean, and plus with established tag teams like New Day, you need like other tag teams for them to face. Otherwise, they're just going to end up facing the same people like time after time, year after year. So,
And what did we see last year? Well, we saw the same tag team matches over and over again, and they were
yeah.
fun, right? But we talked about this because we were like, why are these guys teaming again?
Hmm.
Didn't they already beat them last month? Why is this happening again? And that's because they split up all their tag teams and then throw two people together and put that into the tag team division as a tag team. And are surprised when it doesn't seem to get anybody over except the New Day, an actual established team. It's not rocket science, but
Mm.
apparently it is because we figured it out and nobody else has. How does that work? You know, as soon as they split up heavy machinery, everybody knew. And it sucks, but everybody knew. They're like, that's the end of poor Tucker. And there's a
Yeah.
guy, they didn't do a goddamn thing on the main roster.
Hmm.
And they could have, then they should have. Like, Otis winning the Money in the Bank briefcase doesn't make any sense. Otis and Tucker splitting up for a storyline that went nowhere. And then for Otis to predictably end up tag teaming with somebody totally different because that seems to be their MO.
Hmm.
Split up a tag team and then tag them up with somebody else. I don't fucking understand that at all. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to be said out loud.
Hmm.
It's so stupid, and they do it all the time. They've done it twice already that we're complaining about. I don't know, man. That's a shame for that guy, because again, like if they stuck the two of them together, they would have had a great, successful tag team.
Yeah.
But because they were stupid to split them up, now I don't know what that guy's gonna. I mean, that guy will be fine. You know, he's a big dude. He's got a good look to him. He'll end up being okay. It's just, stupid that they went down this route to begin with.
I think, well, I don't know if we'll see him like end up in any of the other like major companies, to be honest. I think he was solid enough in the tag team and in that role, but like even if you look at him, I saw someone on Twitter the other day said he looks like basically kind of the guy who you'd see wrestling like Mr. Perfect on Superstar Challenge or whatever back in the early 90s,
Uh-huh.
rather than like the star performer. So I don't think he's ever really come across as a guy who was ever going to be like top of the card or like a major player or anything like that. But like you say, I think he can still go out and have a solid career and no doubt make a living from wrestling. But
Right. Like that's another thing that blows my mind is that people just constantly look at the wrestling business and think if they aren't all main eventers, then they're all idiots. I'm like, well, no. And again, something we've talked about plenty of times before, in that in wrestling, there is a hierarchy, whether or not you want to believe it or not. There is a main event, and then there's the mid-carders, and there's the lower guys, and everybody has their part to play in it, right? So if you can contribute to the wrestling business well, and you do your part well, who gives a shit if Tucker's never world heavyweight champion? Because the guy could probably go in and have some solid matches with people, right?
Yeah.
The problem is he just hasn't had the opportunity yet. But if you stick him in the independents, there's a guy who has loads of wrestling knowledge from being in the ring with other talent for the WWE. He's got that, ring name, that recognition. I mean, I guess he can't use the ring name, but he's got the recognition, from being in the WWE to be able to go out and have a pretty good living on the independents, And, yeah, well. I think he could do really well in independence and just kind of clean up that way. But yeah, who else was on the list?
There's Wesley Blake as well.
Yes.
Formerly in a tag team with Buddy Murphy, and then ended up with the Forgotten Sons.
And we forgot all about them. Well, I mean, it's almost as if they wanted us to do that joke. And we did it. Wesley Blake, another guy who you just haven't seen him in the ring for so long. Like, he was fun whenever he was with Buddy Murphy in that tag team in NXT. But that was, 5 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
2016, 2017?
I think so. It ran its course when Alexa Bliss got the call up to the main roster. So I think that was like sort of 2016.
Yeah. But like since then, and God bless them, they've tried to do stuff with Buddy Murphy. But Wesley Blake just, like, he really did disappear. So then whenever I saw the Forgotten Sons, I'm like, all right, cool. I can kind of dig this. Because that's what it seemed like. They were Forgotten Sons. Nobody remembered who they were. And so they were going to get some revenge. And once again, like every time in WWE, they come up with a good idea and they go nowhere with it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that sounds cool, And then what did they do with that? Nothing. And then they split that team up because one of the guys apparently got heat with the boys, and that one guy who got heat with the boys is now on TV regularly.
Yes.
Like, get the fuck out of here. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Something's up with that. That doesn't make any sense. And where's the other guy? Where's Cutler? Was it Steve Cutler?
Yeah, he got released.
Did he?
Yeah, he got released earlier this year because I think he may have hosted or at least gone to like a COVID party, and then
Oh yeah. Well, then in that case, it was probably just a matter of time before Wesley Blake, because they just had nothing else for him to do.
Yeah.
But then again, there's a guy who can take the recognition he was able to make. And again, because he wasn't on TV a whole lot, it's tough, but he still has had a name in the WWE and NXT. He can go off and do a good job in the independents. Yeah. And build up a name, That's how you do it. You got to go and build up a name, and that's how you get people interested in you again. I get another tag team out the window.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow. Is that all of them?
So there's one more, and it's Bo Dallas.
Oh, I can't believe I forgot about Bo Dallas. I mean, of course, I can believe that I forgot about Bo Dallas, because where has Bo Dallas been the last 3 years?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been a weird career for him, because he kind of started off as like a pretty good heel in early NXT, and I think he was one of the first NXT champions and stuff like that, and then he came up to the main roster, and he had the whole Bo Leave gimmick, and he was kind of a good annoying heel, but like that kind of had a ceiling on it, and then he started being almost like typecast as a jobber in like most of the feuds he was in, and that was if he was even in feuds, because half the time he was just losing matches, and that led to him being in like comedy or like jobber groups like the Social Outcasts and the B Team. So he kind of got stuck in that role and floundered in it, and I think that's why sort of late 2019, he asked for some time off from WWE to kind of recharge his batteries and just come off the road, and hopefully when he was ready to come back, then he'd have built up enough time away that people would miss him and like appreciate him more when he did come back. But trouble is, he never did come back. So yeah, he's pretty much spent the last 18 months or so sat at home collecting paychecks for doing nothing. So fair play to him.
It's the old Iron Sheik deal.
Yeah.
Exactly, dude. Fair play to him. I mean, he gets to sit and rest a bit and get paid for it. But again, a guy who's in the wrestling family business, he probably wants to go out and wrestle. And here's hoping a guy like Bo Dallas can kind of go on the independents and make a name for himself too. I don't know if any of the bigger companies we've been talking about today would go straight for Bo Dallas, but he's the kind of guy I imagine could actually do something interesting on the independents to get other companies to take note of him. His brother is Bray Wyatt, who is no stranger to doing weird things to get people talking about him. I feel like Bo Dallas will be able to pull something out that'll make everybody go, hey, hot damn, see what this guy can do if you just give him a chance. I feel like we're gonna see that kind of thing from him.
I mean, the biggest surprise with Bo Dallas's release is that
he was still employed.
Yeah, I mean, when Curtis Axel got released last year, this time you thought, well, hang on, where's Bo Dallas then? What's going on? But yeah, I mean, like you say, I think he's got the potential to kind of go out and get noticed, but he's not someone that I see any company kind of rushing out to sign before anyone else does. So
right,
we'll see how it goes.
I think right now nobody's bending over backwards to get Bo Dallas in their company, but I feel like if he wanted to, he could go out and make a name for himself and get people interested. But again, from what I've heard, he seems pretty happy. Like, what's he up to? Real estate or something?
Yeah, I think he's got his own farm he lives on as well. I think he goes out with Liv Morgan, and they kind of have their own farm where they've got animals and stuff as well. So
that's a full-time commitment.
Yeah,
that shit's not easy. So hey, maybe he's just happy. I mean, again, some of these guys are probably happier they're not even in the wrestling business anymore. They're like, I'm going home.
Yeah.
See you later, right? I don't know, man. It's weird. This whole releases is weird. I don't see why the WWE needed to trim the fat, to trim the budget whenever they've made monster profits.
Well, it's the most profitable year in WWE history, 2020.
Yep.
Like they made $583 million dollars in TV rights. They saved like 88.7 million in like operating expenses and production costs compared to the previous year. So I mean, it's not like they can use budget cuts as a genuine reason. I mean,
oh yeah, like
for Christ's sake, they even made like $325,000 just for selling those NFTs of the Undertaker over WrestleMania as well. It's like, these guys are rolling in money. Come on.
Wait. How much did they make for the NFTs?
$325,000.
You couldn't pay that to Samoa Joe?
I mean,
he probably makes a lot more than that, I guess.
Yeah.
But I can't believe that somebody paid for them NFTs. That's amazing. I mean, I'm not at all surprised that WWE jumped on that, but I am disappointed that people have bought them.
Yeah.
You idiots. Oh boy. Well, there you go. That's all the releases. Pretty much covered. Pretty bummed about some of those, but I feel like a lot of these people will bounce back and they'll do okay for themselves,
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty disappointed with the releases last year, where there was a lot of kind of big names that you were surprised to see let go. But I think what last year proved is that there is life after WWE, and being released isn't the end of the world for these guys. So like you say, I think hopefully most of them will be able to bounce back and find new roles and do things which WWE just wouldn't gonna let them do because of their weird structure where
Nobody
they
gets over.
yeah, essentially, yeah.
Very strange, very odd way to run a business. But yeah, I agree with you. I think we'll see. I think a lot of these guys will be able to make a big name for themselves outside of wrestling, and will probably end up back in the WWE sooner rather than later. I mean, we saw Chris Jericho back in the WWE a few weeks ago, kind of, technically, but that still counts. We saw CM Punk come back, kind of, technically.
Well, Drake Maverick got rehired like after a couple of weeks being released last year as well.
And look at him now. Riding high. At least he's got a job.
Yep.
Cut to 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
When they thought they released him, but they didn't, so they're releasing him now. Well, we shall see. Who knows what the next batch of releases are going to be? Who knows who the next batch of hires is going to be? I don't know, but I guess we'll find out. We'll see. But that's it. That's what we think about all of these wrestling releases recently. It's been crazy times. If you want to stick around and check out some of our other videos, give us a little subscribe on the YouTubes, share it around, tell your friends, because it's great content. This is great content, right?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. There you go. We got a hell yeah for it. That means it's official. So, yes, we're going to be back next week with another great video all about wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. So, until then, we're going to see you later. And take it easy, fellas.